I am convinced that a lot of what's going on is an organized effort to tear down the Senate.
Sex, lies, and videotape in Tallahassee. It's looking pretty sleazy up there.
I'm announcing my candidacy for governor of the state of Florida.
Shocking, the worst kept secret. And now that it's official, what are Philip Levine's chances?
I was disgusted and I was appalled.
Strong words, strong action from the Miami fire chief as he fires 6 firefighters for graphic racist vandalism.
Good morning. Great to be with you this morning. We begin with the intense focus on state government this week that had little to do with actual lawmaking and a lot to do with the sexual behavior of some lawmakers.
Actually, sexual misbehavior. The sordid story features 2 powerful state senators, both of whom have had a fall from grace. Jeff Clements of Palm Beach County was set to become the most powerful Democrat in the state Senate, the minority leader. He resigned when the story broke that he had an affair with a younger female lobbyist.
Now the second most influential senator, Jack Latvala of Clearwater, chair of appropriations and candidate for governor, is fighting sex harassment accusations of 6 women who work in the state capitol and had business dealings with him. The allegations involve spying with hidden cameras, a scandal threatening to upend Florida's legislative process. What is going on in Tallahassee? Senator Perry Thurston is with us today, a Democrat representing much of Fort Lauderdale and chair of the Legislative Black Caucus. Good morning.
Good morning, and it's good to be here with you. Wish it was on better terms.
Can I say, you're one of the few legislators from South Florida that actually said yes at the invitation today.
Well, Glenda, we come out for other things whenever it's good. We should come out when it's bad as well.
We're glad that you did. These frankly shocking, disturbing revelations about Senator Jack Latvala. At this point, they're only accusations, but this is serious stuff.
No, it's very serious stuff, and I think that the president has set the right tone that there will be zero tolerance for any type of sexual harassment
or harassment. President.
That's correct. The Senate president has set the tone that there's zero tolerance. And I think that all of the members of the Senate will agree with that.
So the Senator, Latvala, has come forward publicly to say this is blatantly not true. This is a smear campaign. He used the word fake news, and he raised the possibility that because he is now a candidate, as yet not official, for governor, all of a sudden this has come out. What's your reaction to that?
Well, my reaction is that once an allegation is made, you have to investigate the allegations, and we have to have a system where individuals who make allegations will feel comfortable coming forth with their allegations. With regards to the outcome of the issue, you know, it's going to be investigated. It's going to come before the Rules Committee, which I serve on, and I can assure you we're going to take it seriously.
But it seems the process that Senator Negron of Stewart, the Senate president, has outlined here says, as I understand it, you got a complaint about sexual harassment, inappropriate behavior, you report to my office. Is that really the best way to go?
Well, I think that it's probably not. But I also see that they've offered to revise that, and Senator Audrey Gibson, who's running for our leader, has made some other suggestions and possible methods of making it more convenient for someone who make a complaint. And what I think is we need alternatives. We need the process that's going to be most welcoming to someone who has a problem to have it redressed.
I think it's safe to say that the U.S. in the time of Harvey Weinstein has made it, you know, funny in some respects, but has paved the way for a lot of women who may not have felt so comfortable or worse to come forward, not only in Hollywood, but in every industry and in state government as well.
Media. Corporations, business.
And I think that's a good thing. I think that if there's harassment, there should be zero tolerance in the media. It should be zero tolerance in government. You know, it's one thing when we start parsing infidelity, but harassment, unwelcome contact, that should be a zero tolerance in any industry.
Yeah. Senator, excuse me for one second. Sure. What's going on in Tallahassee right now this week is sort of just mushroomed allegations of a lot of different things.
Right.
Sexual harassment is one thing. Well, I like to call it sexual bullying because I think that's a much more appropriate term in a workplace or in a position of power. affairs between consensual adults, as has come forward. Jeff Clemens, senator, resigned because of that. Allegations that there might be other things going on between office holders. That's a wholly different subject. Kind of, it seems like it's all being lumped together this week.
And I think that that's a problem. That's a problem when you lump it all together, because you take away from the legitimate concerns of individuals who are actually being harassed. And I looked at some of the reports coming back after Senator Clemens' resignation, and it just made it seem like when I read it, I was like, well, I don't think he was accused of any of those things. What he was accused of is concerning, and what I'm more concerned about is family. But when you start lumping the plight of a victim of harassment with that of some consenting adults and infidelity. Not that that's right, and I'm not defending that, but that's totally different.
Although
and
when the infidelity is between lobbyist and office holder, that kind of complicates and muddies the waters as well, with suggestions of maybe pay to play or relationships, quid pro quo. It's so complicated.
No, it is complicated. And anytime you're trying to police morality, it is going to be complicated. But we can choose to draw strict lines and say we're going to not allow this, not allow this. But then you're policing the bedroom, and if it's consenting adults, how do you get to the truth of the matter?
Yeah.
Senator Thurston, the last time that you were here a few months ago, it was in connection with a really ugly racist comments that then Senator Frank Artelis of Miami had made in Tallahassee to the senator you just mentioned, Audrey Gibson of Jacksonville. You were there. You heard this. You witnessed this. Artelis later was forced within a week to resign. He apparently promised revenge for being forced out. Is what's going on with Jack Latvala revenge, or the hiring a private investigator, shooting videotape in Tallahassee? Is that all part of the same thing?
That's a good question, and I don't know if it is, and I don't know if he's carrying out his promise, or if there's something else, some other political motivation behind the allegations. But I think that it's good that we're addressing the issue. If there's one person who feels that they're being harassed, I think it's great that we're addressing it. But I do think you have to look at the motivation behind what's occurring and why it's occurring now, and what we've been able to what we will be able to accomplish.
So if there is a political motivation of what is happening now, does that matter when what is coming to light has been, by all accounts, going on in Tallahassee for decades and isn't right?
I think it absolutely does not matter, but it just shows what the motivation is. And you know, when you say it's been going on for decades, I want to tell you on behalf of my colleagues, the vast majority have nothing to do with certainly any type of sexual harassment nor infidelity. So when we say that it's a culture of this going on, it's probably just like in all society, you've got 10 or 20% that may be involved in it.
Or
so
you
you're
don't
feeling
know that.
tainted by this.
Well, you don't know that because people are not coming forward. And I think that's a very important concept to wrap your head around, is that people are not coming forward and haven't been coming forward. But I will tell you, some insiders that I spoke with this morning, say this is the tip of the iceberg, that people who are coming forward to talk about this concept are involved in the similar culture themselves.
Well, I think that under those circumstances, that means this is a good thing. When we have people who feel free to talk about the fact that they've been harassed or bullied, that's when we get to the problem. And I think those individuals who are not conducting themselves in that manner, they would like to see that happen so that they're not tainted with that type of behavior.
You know, Senator, I've got to say, I have over decades spent time every legislative session in Tallahassee. I've never been stationed in Tallahassee, but there is, when we talk about this culture, what you have is a lot of powerful, mainly men. You have some ambitious younger women who are very attractive, who are lobbyists or work on the staff. They want something. The men sometimes want something. There's a lot of booze that is consumed in Tallahassee. For 2 months, it's kind of a behavioral sink. It's an intense situation up there. I mean, it would be naive to think that sometimes things happen, sexual relationships. But what we're talking about here with Jack Latvala is of another kind, isn't it?
That's absolutely of another kind. And even the scenario that you paint of what the culture is there, certainly it would be naive to think that there was not some relationships going on. I mean, I've heard that there have been lobbyists and legislators who've gotten married after those relationships.
Yeah.
So it's absolutely going on. But it's a difference if you're talking about consenting adults and unwanted physical harassment.
And that's what these women allege
Right.
in the Political article. Also in that article, former Representative, now Congressman Matt Gaetz, is quoted on the record as saying it's been known for years that Jack Latvala was a dog, a absolute dog, hound rather, a hound, meaning that he had been behaving like this for a long time.
You know,
were you aware that he acted like this around women?
And that's why it's so important that we have this investigation. I've been in the legislature for going on 10 years now.
Right.
I haven't seen that type of attitude, but if people are conducting themselves in that manner, they probably wouldn't do it around me. But I have not witnessed that. And I would tell you that the vast majority of my colleagues are going to tell you that they haven't witnessed it either, but that doesn't mean that it's not happening. And if it is happening, we need to stamp it out so that it's not tainting the rest of the people who are there to serve their community.
So can we just put sort of a fine point on that? You've been in the Senate your first term,
Right.
but in the legislature for almost a decade.
That's correct.
You have never seen nor even heard of any of this going on?
I've heard
personally?
of individuals having relationships, but in terms of harassment, you know, forcing oneself on someone who didn't want that type of attention, no, I haven't. I have seen what Mike talks about, the atmosphere and the alcohol and the fraternizing. So clearly that goes on. So one would assume, if you're not naive, that it may lead to other things. But in terms of forcing someone or trying to, you've got to do this for me to do this for you, I haven't seen that.
And maybe just as important, have you seen, been part of, or privy to relationships in a city where relationships mean votes or relationships mean business, which is not unusual in any industry? Right. Have you seen relationships between people who might be in a position for a quid pro quo?
Well, I've seen lots of relationships. There are a lot of relationships going on, but I can't say that what the motivation is behind the relationship. And that's the problem when things are done secretly. You don't know if there is something being done in that fashion. But I can tell you, as far as any harassment, I haven't seen that. Are there favors being given for different favors? That I would not know.
Senator Perry Thurston, great to have you come in. Once again, let me compliment you. We invited every other senator from South Florida, state senator, and they all just were too busy to come in. So we're grateful that you did.
Well, I welcome the opportunity, and as we deal with other issues, you know, we're going to come in. So when things are not pleasant, we should come in.
Got you on speed dial.
We'll get you back
right.
on another topic.
Well, it's good to see you.
Thank you very much.
Up next, major developments in Venezuela being watched so closely in South Florida.
We're going to have a live report from Caracas. That's next.
All right.
In Venezuela, deep divisions following recent elections mark the latest moves by the Nicolas Maduro regime there.
Indications point to a country out of money, on the verge of default. Meanwhile, opposition leaders are taking refuge. Some are looking for exile. Cody Weddle is on the front lines of it all in Caracas, and as you see, joins us right now live from there. Cody, good morning.
Good morning, Cody.
Good morning, Glenna and Michael, to you guys. That's right. On Thursday, President Maduro taking to state TV and saying that the country intends to restructure and refinance its debt. Now, he didn't say that Venezuela would default, but many are taking this as a sign that for the first time, Venezuela cannot pay its bills. Remember, economists have projected this for years because during the Chavez years, when this country was awash in oil money, Chavez spent even more money than that. And so now that there is much less revenue, Venezuela is trying to pay back those debts from the Chavez years. The problem with any restructuring or refinancing will be the U.S. sanctions currently on Venezuela, which prohibit any U.S. entities from dealing in new Venezuelan debt. So some have said any restructuring or refinancing will actually be impossible here because of those sanctions. Now, if the country were to enter into default, that could be a very chaotic situation because creditors could try to seize Venezuelan oil tankers or Venezuelan refineries outside of the country. It would also probably worsen the humanitarian situation here, as the government couldn't import foods or medicines. And so you may be thinking this is the perfect time for the opposition to show some leadership, but unfortunately for them at least, they remain highly divided after the regime secured a very surprising victory last month in gubernatorial elections, and some of those governors-elect swore in front of that pro-government constitutional assembly. And as a further sign of that division, municipal elections coming up. Some parties are participating, some aren't participating. So they remain highly divided. And as you mentioned at the beginning, some breaking news today, the vice president of the Venezuelan National Assembly taking refuge yesterday in the Chilean embassy. The Supreme Court had lifted his immunity, and it's suspected he could face charges for his role in this year's protest. Glenn and Michael.
Cody, go back, if we can, for a second to the debt payments. I see that on November 2nd, there was a $1.1 billion bond payment that had to be made. There was a 3-day grace period to make that payment. Did Venezuela make that payment today, or will it make it tomorrow?
Venezuela did make that payment, and that's what's really confusing for bondholders, because that payment was made, but it doesn't make sense. Why would Maduro say they're out of money and they need to restructure if they made that payment? So many people are very confused, especially these big funds that hold Venezuelan bonds are very confused as to what exactly will be happening going forward. But that last payment was made. It's the future payments that Maduro said will need to be restructured.
And Cody, real quickly, you mentioned the opposition leader seeking refuge in the Chilean embassy, and we're getting reports that the Maduro government is actually releasing, little by little, political prisoners. Put that in context. What does that mean?
Well, I think it's a game that the government has played for some time now. It's sort of a give and take. They will release some folks to get some good press and say, hey, the government's moving, the regime's moving in the right direction. And then, as we saw, they just released 2 political prisoners, and now the parliamentary immunity of Freddy Guevara has been lifted. And it's sort of also what we saw. Remember what happened with Leopoldo Lopez. He was released, then he was taken back, and he was released again. So this is what we've sort of seen with these hundreds of political prisoners.
Yeah. Cody Weddle in Caracas, we're glad you're there for us, Cody. Be well. Take care of yourself.
Cody, thanks. Next up, we take it all to the roundtable. Stay with us.
Oh my goodness, we have so much to talk about today with the roundtable, so let's get right to the introductions. Marlon Hill is an attorney with the Hamilton Miller and Berthasell firm and a past president of the Caribbean Bar Association. Marlon just got back from the Caribbean, where he got a firsthand look at rebuilding efforts following Hurricanes Irma and Maria.
Mark Caputo, Florida correspondent for Politico and author of the daily Politico Florida Playbook. He was part of the Politico reporting team that broke the Jack Latvala story late this week. Angela Vasquez is president of the Women's Republican Club of Miami. Welcome back to everybody, to the roundtable.
Angie, great to have you. Marlon, Mark, let's begin with this, I think, stunning Jack Latvala story that you and a colleague from Politico broke this week. You spoke to 6 women altogether who work in the Capitol, had some kind of association over a long period, I guess, with him. Do you find all these women credible?
Well, they're all telling very similar stories. 3 are Democrats, 3 are Republicans, 1's a Senate staffer, 5 are lobbyists, 5 say he physically groped them, 1 said he was just incredibly demeaning in the way, and degrading in the way he described her in sexual terms. So we find them kind of organically. It wasn't part of some sort of big conspiracy he's trying to suggest. So the idea that they're all simultaneously lying and making up the story, I guess, is possible, but it seems like something happened. And incidentally, you referenced Congressman Matt Gaetz, who had said that he was known around the Capitol as a hound. That's true, and these women kind of attest to that. So I understand Senator Perry Thurston wants to kind of say the institution, they're not all bad. Perry Thurston's right. But in this case, we do have a lot of cases of what Glenn has said. You can't really call it necessarily sexual harassment as much as sexual bullying.
Right.
And that's really what these women were describing.
I defy you to find a woman in the workplace who has not experienced sexual bullying.
I think it's unfortunately in every industry. It's not surprising that it be in the legislature, and it's a shame. I'm glad to see some women are coming out. They do have to be credible. I do find that it could be used as a weapon against it, but I would agree there's probably nobody I know who can't say it's been done.
Does that surprise you?
Doesn't surprise me at all. You know, I think that with Harvey Weinstein, it has opened the Pandora's box with more women feeling empowered to really come forward and address this issue. And every organization has a culture that manifests itself over a period of time. But now, with the Senate, goes to the top of Tallahassee.
Do you find, Mark, that the 6 women who came forward felt empowered because of the post-Weinstein fallout?
Well, the way we did this, we had 3 of us working on this. Each of us wound up with 2 women independently, so we don't know the other one's sources. And we did this to make sure they were protected. They were very nervous. However, 5 of them decided to go on background with us after Senator Jack Latvala had been asked by one of our reporters at a public press event, is sexual harassment a problem in the Senate? His response was to say, well, I never sexually harassed anyone. Well, Senator, that wasn't the question. And then he kind of was intimidating.
Is that a guilty conscience?
Well, as they say, a guilty conscience needs no accuser. Can't say that's necessarily the case here, but it is a saying. And he was also very kind of aggressive with our reporter. So that was the way he responded to those allegations, and these women came forward. If you don't mind, I just want to point out, the Florida Senate says it has a zero-tolerance policy, but its reaction to this situation, when they knew we were reporting this out, was to change the way sexual harassment was reported, to not go to Human Resources, but to go to the Senate President's office. I understand the Senate President has to appoint the Florida Senate Budget Chairman. Then they appointed an investigator who's the general counsel, who is a friend of Senator Jack Latvala and had worked under him for years to head the investigation.
Sounds pretty incestuous.
Who has since bowed out?
She has now bowed out under pressure. And they've kept Senator Jack Latvala in as budget chairman, and while budget chairman now, he has now reached out to other lobbyists to have them attest for them, and the women feel that he is part and is launching a counteroffensive to proactively destroy their reputations. So it's very difficult for the women to trust the system, the culture, and the atmosphere. Right now they trust the news media, which is great, but there's only so much we can do in these circumstances.
Yeah. And the system, culture, and atmosphere is fueled by the power that's around.
Yeah.
Someone like.
Well, in fact, and I would like you both to comment on this, beyond what he did, and I'm going to accept on good faith that your reporting is absolutely truthful. What I find deeply offensive is the guy who controlled the purse strings, one of maybe the 3 or 4 most powerful members of the legislature, either approved or disapproved legislation, appropriations, according to how women allowed him to come onto them. I mean, this is just the kind of most fundamental, egregious, and offensive abuse of power.
Allegedly, okay. So I think that there needs to be, fair enough, I think there needs to be an open investigation with allow the accusers to come forward and bring information that's necessary. And this is part of the problem with sexual harassment. Do you have an environment in your workplace or in your organization or in your state or country for that matter that allows women to feel empowered to come forward when things like this happen?
Angie?
Well, I'm glad you said alleged, because it still is alleged, and I think it would be wrong for anyone accused of something to be removed from a position or judged without any proof. But the nature is just that. I mean, you are being harassed because it's someone in power. And so you are putting your job at risk, and you are, up to a certain point, even putting your reputation at risk should you come forward.
And one of the things, Glenna, that Senator Thurston said is that, these relationships happen between elected officials and lobbyists, right? Yeah. There is a line where lobbyists and elected officials should not cross when it comes to trying to allocate power or misabuse the power that they have.
Well, absolutely, but if I may say, there is an excellent piece in the Miami Herald this morning that talks about the fact that towards the end of the session, that the big lobbying firms bring in closers, which is to say very attractive young men and women who, spend time having drinks with the lawmakers.
Let's be clear, it's young women.
All right, it's young women.
Define young.
I mean, forgive me, but this is like one step above pimping.
Well, welcome to the Florida Capitol. And I think in what you guys had said here is it's important to point this out with the Harvey Weinstein situation. Harvey Weinstein was in Hollywood, and there are many Hollywood studios. There's only one Florida Capitol. It's a very closed ecosystem. It's incredibly difficult for women to come forward and complain.
Even on award shows, though, it was joked around that Weinstein had an issue and was getting people's careers lining up with how they were treated. So he's got a long
It was a joke.
Right, exactly. So it was a
this as a
long-standing problem. I don't think that, like the senator said, a couple or maybe several allegations makes Tallahassee equal to Hollywood. I think that's just a little bit too much. But I think it should be investigated thoroughly.
It's not equal at all. In fact, the problem with Tallahassee is that it's an old boys network controlled by men. And it's very difficult for women to succeed in that process without being sexualized.
Whether it's Hollywood or
And there's
Tallahassee.
no other game in town.
Yeah.
If you work in government, you don't go higher in Florida than Tallahassee. There's only one state capital.
Is
I
the
agree.
investigation into this or any other similar situation clouded by the fact that because there are no witnesses, it's usually a he said, she said, a man can come forward and say, oh my gosh, that was not my intention. That's not what I meant. Does that cloud the ability to investigate those actions?
I
or
think the fact that
intentions?
there's 6 women who have all corroborated probably means that someone somewhere is doing things they shouldn't. But like I said, it's alleged. You have the right to be judged. And the problem is, this is an early session. So, you know, the senator should not be, in my opinion, removed without any proof. But as budget chairman, he wields a lot of power. And that's probably, I don't want to judge all of Tallahassee, but it may be part of the reason you couldn't get other senators to come forward, because he is a powerful, powerful person.
Yeah, he remains. And then, as Mark pointed out, I think in the green room, part of it is protecting the institution, and that, in effect, is what Perry Thurston was doing as well. God bless him for coming. But if you are a member of the Senate, you don't want to be tainted by the bad actions of 1 or 2 people.
But I think the vast majority of them are not like that. You have to weed out, pull out, I think, the weeds, people like that from their...
And I agree. I know a lot of these people. I mean, Mark knows them intimately because he covers this.
Well, let's define intimate.
Well, I mean, you know them.
It's a joke, by the way.
Let's take a break right now, and we'll be right back.
Back, we are in the midst of a rockin' roundtable. Angela Vasquez, Miami Republican Women's Club, Marlon Hill, our friend, attorney, civic activist, and Mark Caputo. I know, Mark, you and I and lots of other media and several hundred people were at the kickoff this week of Philip Levine's campaign announcement. What a surprise that he is running for governor. What did you think?
Well, it looked like a big, he got his money, made his fortune in the cruise ship industry, so it looked like a big cruise ship event. You know, he had like a DJ, and he busted in old people, and he fed them. So it was a great event by virtue of its spectacle. But now the question is can he continue that on and actually make a dent in the governor's race? Yeah, he didn't discount that he'd spent as much as $25 million in his own money, which really makes him a serious contender in the state.
Just like it made Governor Rick Scott a very serious contender the first time around. What does this do, Marlon, to the Democratic primary? I mean, is this going to be money versus name recognition? You know, Gwen Graham right now, polls show, has at least a lead in that respect.
Money goes a long way, but relationships go even further, right? So he's going to have to use the money to get across this very diverse state of ours, North, Central Florida, Southwest, South Florida. Take him a long way, but I'm not so sure whether or not it's going to take him far enough over 7 months to really be competitive in the primary.
Although, if he did not have that shot, he's a smart guy. I don't know that he would have formally announced if he didn't think so. Right?
Well, I think he thinks so, obviously, and money does play a part of it. But I think he has aspirations. People don't always run the first time thinking that this is my only shot at it. Because Florida is a huge state, and I don't think he's the most experienced person right now as far as being governor.
He's not. I think what he really has going for him is that he is the one Democrat from South Florida where there are, 4.7 million registered Democratic voters, and he is counting somehow on being the hometown boy. I don't think necessarily that works.
Governor Graham is loved and adored down here, and I think there's a lot of people who still remember him. And
Bob Graham.
Bob Graham. I'm sorry, Bob Graham.
Well, no, you said Governor Graham.
Well, he was governor.
But he hasn't been on a ballot since, 1998 or something?
I
Right.
would say he's remembered.
Yeah, that's.
No, he is remembered
Of course.
and respected.
The question is are the pattern primary voters going to remember him? I'm not quite sure, because a lot of the older Democrats who existed back then are dead. A lot of the white Democrats who are older have gone to the Republican Party or NPA. But I'm not saying that Philip Levine is going to beat Glenn Graham because no one remembers Bob Graham. But I'm coming back to the money. They think that in the general election next year, it can cost as much as $3 million a week to advertise on television.
Well, listen, the big
Statewide.
Fight, the big fight is going to be over
is
South Florida, right?
staggering.
Yes.
Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach voters for sure. And of course, you know, Central Florida plays it.
Central.
But the numbers are in South Florida. The last couple election cycles where the governors on the Democratic side lost was because they did not pay attention to South Florida.
Yeah.
That he may have an edge there because he's here. He just received the Legion Award. Congratulations to him for his work with climate change. So he will spend a lot of time here trying to mine those votes here. But we'll see, and it's a lot of time to go.
There's we just had a slate up showing the 4 people who are in the race currently. John Morgan, who in Orlando, the attorney that was behind the marijuana amendment. I mean, there is a very good shot he might get in. What does that do?
Well, I think he's a big contender as well. He passed that amendment, and he's in the corridor up there. Orlando does have a good number of voters, and they are usually leaning a little bit to the left. So I think the 3 of them have different
He's got
venues
money.
to get in there. And yes, he does have money.
I just don't know if John Morgan in the end wants to do it, because the problem is he's got a very successful law firm. When you enter politics, half of the voters start to hate you. And do you want to negatively brand your business that way? And I think that's a major concern of his.
All right, if we can, before we run out of time, we must talk about Donna Brazile and the book Hacks, which she published this week. She was just on This Week with George Stephanopoulos. And in the book, she takes a really good swipe at Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Let's put the quote from the book up on the screen if we can, so you can see at least part of what she said. She said, "My predecessor, Florida Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz, had not been the most active chair in fundraising. As Hillary's campaign gained momentum, she resolved the party's debt and put it on a starvation diet. It had become dependent on her campaign for survival, for which she expected to wield control of its operations. Debbie was not a good manager." I mean, you know.
Oof.
Oof.
Yeah.
You know, the Thanksgiving table is not going to be a very happy place to be for the DNC come this November. You know, Donna was going to be here in about a couple of weeks at the Miami Book Fair with Anna Navarro in a conversation. Folks can go and ask her direct
Can't
questions.
wait for that one.
There's going to be probably standing room only there. But every organization goes through, you know, being a business lawyer for over 20 years, every organization goes through these ups and downs and these turmoil. The Democratic Party is going through one of those moments where they have to air out a lot of stuff to really get to the point of some kind of being on the same page.
But that is big turmoil. I mean, this is not a little small bump. I mean, between fixing the primary. I mean, Debbie the representative was hired immediately by the Clintons the day almost, I believe, after that she resigned from the DNC. I mean, when you say that you rigged primaries.
Hired in what way?
Or endorsed, you mean, I think.
I believe she received the job in Hillary's campaign shortly after she resigned, right after it.
I don't think she ever had a paid position. It may have been some kind of advisory or honorary, but of course she had been Hillary Clinton's honorary campaign chair before, so it's not as if, but I think, Mark, the effective accusation by Donna Brazile is that Debbie put her thumb on the scale and Bernie Sanders got screwed.
I think it's more that Hillary put her thumb on the scale and that Debbie allowed her to do it, and that Debbie kind of didn't care. And in addition, don't let Barack Obama off the hook. They also talked about Barack Obama's neglect. I mean, I think that what the salient thing here is that when you talk to people who worked in the DNC, they thought Debbie was not a good manager. And now you actually have someone on the record who was there saying it, and she wasn't.
Can I, you know, admittedly, I have not read the book. What would be the motivation for someone like Donna Brazile to write this tell-all about her own party at this moment in time?
We're talking about it, and she's got a book to sell.
Yeah. Is it money, selling a book? Because if she's a party woman, this is not good.
Well, this is a great way to get back on cable as a talking head, which she was before she went back to the DNC.
But maybe she is considered, I mean, she's been a lifelong Democrat, a strategist on television. And maybe she does want to fix the DNC before the next presidential election. You know, this can't happen again, and let's do it right now in 2017.
Before it gets better, it gets worse.
And then, yes, you'll make money off the book.
Very Leninist, heighten the contradictions, I guess. But yeah, in the end, I think all of those things are probably true. But the primary motivation is she wrote a book and we're talking about
she's
it.
selling
That's
it.
the
You're
name
going
of
to
the
write
game.
a book?
Okay.
You write a book?
All right.
Not anytime soon.
Thank you all. We are out of time. Coming up next, catch and release South Florida's residents frustrated with the repeat crime in the neighborhood, taking law into their own hands, and Glenna is going to have a report. Arrest and release. Too often, that is the pattern in South Florida, where repeat criminals are caught, face a judge, and then are set free and go out and commit new crimes.
We saw that firsthand, along with a group of residents fed up, fighting back, showing up in court to change the system. Watch the man in the blue shorts with a stick. That's Dwayne Bunyan. At the time of that fight, he'd logged 180 arrests over 20 years for violence, drugs, robbery.
You're Dwayne Bunyan, right?
We found him Thursday morning on Ocean Drive, where he typically heads after arrest and release.
There are people who are saying you've been in and out of jail. They're afraid that you're out again. Is that true? You all right?
Hold that thought. Right across the street,
Don't put your camera on. Don't put your camera on.
that's Kevin Gibson, aka Pirate. He's due in court in December on drug charges. He was just released last April from the latest of his 5 prison stays over 4 decades: robbery, kidnap, drugs.
You're free on bond,
Who
right?
told you that?
It's in the court records.
Why you got your camera on me?
How many times you been in and out of jail?
I need money.
You need money?
The criminals feel comfortable, and the residents and the visitors do not feel comfortable.
A group of Miami Beach residents wondering why they continue to see repeat offenders arrested, released, and back on the beach. They've organized, researched, and now they head to court hearings to convince judges to keep the chronically accused in custody. Listen.
He has 2 open felony strong-arm robbery cases, which were violent cases.
Hearing of Andre Dearman's other open cases involving violence and a break from a prior judge, this judge set his bond at $25,000 for a marijuana arrest.
They tell the cops, I don't care. You're arresting me. I'm going to be out here tomorrow.
You
And
heard
they
him
are.
say that?
Oh, yeah.
The behavior is such that there's no consequence for their actions, and we're trying to put the heat on so that they feel the consequence.
Mr. Lovett is on our list of nuisance offenders.
Torrance Lovett was arrested this time for grocery cart theft.
This is his 143rd career arrest. He has many violent convictions.
His bond now, $10,000. Some law enforcement is on record as supportive of that citizen participation. Miami-Dade's public defender, though, he says that those citizens are the ones who may be breaking the law.
We can't be throwing out the Constitution just because some people are unhappy with some result in court.
The man whose office provides legal defense for the indigent calls it a lack of due process, says defendants are blindsided at bond hearings by what might be irrelevant or hearsay testimony with no chance to rebut, like past arrests or charges that were dropped and so no longer count.
The system that is set up in court allows this kind of frustrating, repeated criminality.
I disagree with that. If you have citizens that are concerned, they should work the process legally. There's nothing precluding them from going and talking to the state attorney.
You were arrested for grand theft.
At Donnie Sims' bond hearing last week, the assistant public defender tried to block citizen testimony.
I've noted multiple times he does not have standing to address the court.
Florida's Rules of Criminal Procedure does not directly address standing, but does give judges wide discretion in what facts to consider in setting a bond.
I believe an increased bond is warranted based on the numerous convictions from this year.
Is the people versus the defendant. We are the people. We're the community. We're allowed to talk as to the risk to the community.
In an email, Miami-Dade State Attorney Catherine Fernandez-Rundle, she said that her office supports citizen participation in the legal process. But what she did stop short of saying is that she condones this group's specific actions.
Outstanding reporting, Glenna. Loved
you.
seeing you walking along next to the pirate.
Defendants, yes, thank you.
Okay. All right, so to come, my personal perspective about a sick culture in the state capitol. And here is a live look now from our Hollywood Beach Cam. Beautiful.
Woohoo! Here is Weather Authority meteorologist Jennifer Correa with your Sunday forecast. Beautiful, Jennifer.
Absolutely beautiful, Glenna and Michael. Another live view, this one out of Miami's Tower Cam overlooking Brickell Key and towards Miami Beach. It is nice and mostly sunny. Those clouds building over land with daytime heating. But it's not too warm just yet. In the low 80s right now, 82 degrees Miami, 81 Fort Lauderdale. Notice those winds still out of the north, anywhere between 5 to up to 15 miles per hour. Just keeping a watchful eye on these showers offshore, some getting a little close to Palm Beach coast and also maybe Broward's coastline as well later on this afternoon, but that'll be isolated. For the most part, we have high pressure and control. You could see clear skies over the Gulf of Mexico. That high will glide over the southeast and will leave us with mainly dry conditions today. That rain chance at 20%. Tomorrow, rain chance goes down to 10% with a mix of sun and clouds. So a great way to start off the work week. Highs today in the mid 80s, and we'll keep it in the mid 80s throughout the rest of the week. Also, kickoff tonight. It's going to be mostly clear as the Fins take on the Raiders.
Jen, thanks. All right, before we leave you this morning, a personal perspective about the culture of corruption, personal and professional, in Tallahassee. We have seen some disturbing examples of it. A racist rant by then Senator Frank Artillis of Miami. State Representative Daisy Baez of Coral Gables lied under oath about where she lives. Now she's out. And there was this unseemly affair involving Senator Jeff Clements and a female lobbyist. But the person who to me epitomizes what is so woefully wrong with the culture of Tallahassee is this guy, Senator Jack Latvala, state senator from Clearwater. And if what Politico reported about him is true, he is a despicable person who abused his power and took advantage of many women that he has worked with. 6 women who work in the state capitol told Politico that Latvala, one of the most powerful figures in the state legislature, literally thrust himself on women, groping and grabbing them by the buttocks, touching their breasts, breathing in their ear, saying sexually charged things, all without their permission. Disgusting. Latvala has issued a blanket denial. He says none of this ever happened. He called Politico fake news. Sound familiar? The women all spoke anonymously for fear of retaliation, but at least one former lawmaker, Matt Gaetz, who is now a congressman, went on the record and called Latvala an absolute hound. Gaetz says that he has been acting like this for years. The Senate president has ordered the investigation, but we already know this much. Jack Latvala has disgraced himself and the Senate and the state legislature as a whole. Senate President Negron needs to bust him down as the budget chair. Having that power gave him cover to pull off these alleged repulsive acts. If he had any shame, Latvala would resign. If he stays, he needs to be sanctioned and shunned. Senate President Negron also needs to put in place a meaningful system for reporting sexual harassment. I know a lot of good and honorable people who serve in the state legislature. We need more people like them and fewer like Jack Latvala. That is my perspective for this week. Hope you have a wonderful Sunday. Remember, as always, stay informed, get involved.
And please do let us know what you think about that or any topic in the news. Here are some ways to reach us by email and Twitter. Facebook works. We are very easy to find.
We love hearing from you, and we will respond if you get in touch with us.
Remember, this week, Tuesday, is Election Day in Miami, Miami Beach, and Hialeah. If you haven't voted yet, go do that.
And let's hope the Dolphins show up tonight.
Have a good one.